a great question, Eva. This was an amazing opportunity for Southern Hemisphere to be invited was an enormous opportunity, let alone to participate on the trip. The Quad is a diplomatic relationship between Australia, India, and Japan and the US, which focuses in on delivering geopolitical outcomes for the Indo-Pacific region. For us, we got to showcase, showcase and talk about the Southern Hemisphere assets, being our growing copper asset and our battery minerals asset being manganese, and to understand what's happening in Japan and where they see trade and partnerships taking place with companies such as Southern Hemisphere. Meeting the US Embassy team was interesting for us because we started to understand the work the US Embassy and the US Embassy team and the trade team were doing in relation to critical minerals. And then the follow-up meeting with the Australian ambassador and his team, understanding what they're doing and how they're working with other embassy teams, such as the US and the Indian Embassy, as part of the Quad. What was very overwhelming, the most overwhelming message was Japan is open for business and they want to do business with Australian companies. They particularly want to do business with critical minerals. They see the future of having a diversified supply chain, which means not having all the access to critical minerals, both the mining of those assets and processing of those assets, being controlled by one or two major players in the world. So I think that was very helpful. It also, from both embassies and their staff, we certainly got the messages, how can we help you? We want to do business with you, and how can we help you do business in Japan? So I think that was the big takeaway, and I certainly made some very important contacts, and I've since had follow-up calls and meetings with some of those people to talk about, well, what are the roadblocks? Who can you connect me with, and how can we work around those roadblocks? If in fact there are any, and to date I've not seen that there is any. The meeting with Panasonic was really interesting, and what I felt was really interesting, and I guess that's part of being part of the American Chamber of Commerce trade mission, is how candid and how frank they were about what they saw their challenges for the future around access to critical minerals, about a diversified supply chain. So the big takeaway from that is Panasonic want to do business ethically. They want to be dealing with companies that embody their ESG philosophy. They want to do business with companies operating in Australia, Chile, anyone that has a AAA or a AA rating, which is exactly what Southern Hemisphere is striving to do. In relation to the BSCC, the Battery Supply Chain Committee, Panasonic CEO is the chair of this committee, and the purpose of this committee is to work with companies such as Southern Hemisphere, mineral trading companies, finance companies, and with them to put together a deal to put it, I guess, in short terms, that they will help facilitate that, bring that group together so that they can have access to a sustainable supply chain. And when they talk about sustainable supply chain, they talk about having access to, these critical minerals that are not using modern day slavery, are adhering to the local legislation and laws, adhering to the geopolitical environment, and adhering to the climate change requirements. So I was very impressed with Panasonic and very impressed with how they were moving into Australia and to Chile, which aligns with definitely Southern Hemisphere strategic goals and plan.